What up, what up, what up, everybody? So, this is a live recording show of the About That Wallet where we help you build strong financial habits. And I have a wonderful guest that's going to be joining us today talking about all this math. But before we get into, whoops, I have some. And so before we start getting into all of that fun things, I just want to make sure to say thank you, everybody who is tuning in right now, and thank you for all of you who is taking the time out of the day to get this thing going. So we have a lot to cover, a lot to uncover, and a lot of ways of changing our mindset. So let's give a couple 30 seconds just to kind of get people get tuned in, get settled. Then we just get the show going. All right, all right, all right. So let's go. Small intro.
Welcome to the About That Wallet Show, where building strong financial concepts, strategies, and behaviors has never been so easy to comprehend. Now, here's your host, Anthony Weaver.
What's going on, everybody? So, hey, Akil, how's everything been, sir? Can you hear me okay? I cannot hear you at all. Is it me unmuted or you muted? I don't hear you. Did something happen? I can hear you, like, I'm not sure if you can hear me. If anybody in the audience right now, if y'all can just kind of chime in and say if y'all hear anything. I cannot hear you at all. Yeah, I can't hear you or anything. I checked all my audio settings. Let's see. Try one other thing. Check my audio. My audio is coming through good. My audio is good. But I can't hear you. If you can hear me, I can't hear you though. You say anything? Can you hear me at all? All right, so we're gonna do one of these. That's why I make them. Hey, everything worked out?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah,
Perfect. Okay. I'm not sure what happened.
I don't know either.
I was like, I just went to a little commercial break. So if you could just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you been up to lately?
Well, lately I've been promoting my YouTube channel.
Okay.
And my YouTube channel, people can, whether they're adults or children or, high school students, middle school students, college age students, elementary, they can get math support. They can get basically free math tutorial support that's very culturally relevant. And on the videos, you'll get some Black history. At the same time, you get some, African American history. You'll get African history, and I also promote historically Black colleges on my YouTube channel and my videos. And, so you'll get that. And also I've been promoting my book, my recent book, How to Use All This Math, Volume 1, which is a guidebook, a resource for mainly for parents, but not just parents, any adults in the community that have a concern for the well-being of students and young people in the community in terms of them being able to understand math and not have math anxiety and not have math phobia and being able to do well on standardized tests that, we see the news reports every year that, X amount, these large percentages and swaths of Black students in in the urban communities and even in the suburban communities are doing very poorly on. So, they can get, support, they, adults that are concerned about that can support those young people, because what the book does is what I do is I take everyday activities, and I kind of convert them into teachable moments where you can use those everyday activities to just develop a strong math foundation in young people. Whether it's, riding in the car and having your, children or nieces or nephews look at the license plate of the car in front of you or to the side of you and just take the numbers from the license plate and just, practice adding them, practice multiplying them, practice subtracting them, practice dividing them, things, all types of things of that nature, just to get those reps in, as we say, just like in sports, to get that repetition in. So that way, students are actually prepared to go to math class, whether they be in a public school, private school, charter school. A lot of students are just not prepared for math class, and it shows. And that's when that math anxiety kicks in, and then math phobia ends up kicking in because of a lack of preparation. And I don't really blame parents that much for it, because it really is like a social conditioning that we've all been subjected to, whereas we kind of have been conditioned to just completely outsource mathematics education to the school, into the school systems. But the schools aren't equipped to really ensure that all of our children are equipped for success, mathematically. And especially like in this very STEM heavy, environment that we're in now, the schools are definitely ill-equipped for that. So what I wanted to do is try to create a resource that parents could use and I could meet parents where they are, and they can just do this like during the time that they're already like spending time with their children or nieces or nephews or little cousins, and just take these teachable moments, these activities that they're doing anyway, whether it's running errands and at Target or Walmart or wherever, or in the grocery store, and just leverage those activities, those things you're doing already, so you don't even gotta like create a new routine or a new schedule or anything, and you can just be able to develop arithmetic skills and algebra skills in your children. So those are the two main things I've had going on recently. Just promoting the YouTube channel, trying to make sure everybody knows about it, because everybody that has used it has kind of gave a lot of positive feedback on it. It said it's very helpful and they like it. So now I'm just like, well, I would just like for the whole community to know about it, the whole Black community to know about it, and to have people using it, for homework help, no matter what grade they're in, and have teachers use it. Have teachers use it to help facilitate their lessons in class. Have teachers use it to assign videos for homework support to their students, and even for parents. I want parents to use it too, because what I do is I go over a lot of either the math that they never learned 30 years ago or 40 years ago,
That's
or
true.
some of the so-called new math that which represents new methods of teaching arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, that we just weren't taught. It wasn't in the curriculum 30, 40 years ago. So I even have video content on that. So I really want everybody to be able to take advantage and lock in, subscribe, share the videos, like the videos, and also I have a lot of videos like with my daughter Asada. She's 11 years old, shout out to her. And I'm intentional about including her on the channel. And I even have a couple videos with my youngest son, Kwame, who's 4. And I'm trying to model for parents also that, these are things that we can do as parents. Like, granted, I am a math teacher, I am a math professor, but first and foremost, I'm a father before either of those things, those jobs that I do. And so a lot of things that I teach my students in classrooms and have taught my students in classrooms, I'm teaching my daughter and I'm teaching my children, and I have an older son that's a freshman in college now. And a lot of things, I've taught him over the years. So, I'm also trying to show that we can teach, our children, many things math related. And you don't have to have a math degree and you don't have to be a licensed math educator in order to do this. So I'm trying to show us how to be able to do that as well on the channel.
Yeah, and that's really good because one of the things I always say is never limit the kids, And I hate when I don't say I hate, I just kind of feel annoyed when I hear parents like, "Well, they're not old enough to understand that yet." I was like, "Well, did you give them a chance?"
Right.
Like, put it in front of them. It's almost like you going to the ice cream parlor and they was like, "Oh, I want Rocky Road ice cream." Just throwing out there. And they was like, "But you always get vanilla. How you'll like that? Like you're not old enough to understand the difference between Rocky Road versus regular chocolate." Like, give them a chance. Who knows? They might actually like it and
Yeah.
actually learn a lot from it,
And I see parents do that often. I think that they end up projecting their own insecurities around math
Mm,
children. And I don't think they mean any harm, but they do a lot of harm by doing that, because that even gets into, because we have to even ask the question like, well, how do you know, or how do you judge what an appropriate age level is for a certain math skill or a certain math content? Like when my son was 6 years old, he was in the first grade, and in the curriculum, Philadelphia School District curriculum, they weren't teaching, solving simple one-step or two-step equations. But yet, and still, I still taught him how to solve one-step and two-step equations. And he was 6 years old. And it's not as if, I mean, he's an intelligent person. And I mean, I agree with Amos Wilson and many of our, African Center scholars that say that, all African children are born geniuses. I think it's the system that like dumbs us down, in many ways. But I don't think that he was any more prepared to learn how to solve simple one-step and two-step equations than any of his classmates were, or any of the
right.
other first graders in that public school that he went to. But it just wasn't the plan to teach them that. So it just really makes you think that, wow, like, okay, so but what if they had been, taught that at that young? So, I think we definitely got to challenge our children.
Yeah, and I think you and I we talked about it before on Kamari's page was that limiting kids. And one of the things that I did when I was teaching my students, even though they were in the third grade, so you're looking at around anywhere between age 7, between 6 to 8, roughly. 8 is pushing it, but roughly 6 to 7. And we were doing full equations. We were doing a lot of abstract algebra because obviously it's up to the polynomials at that point. But I was teaching them at least what a nomial is, and then what a variable is, and just solving for it. So that's one of the things that I never seeing that in real life and seeing the transition of what a child can do just with a little bit of patience and a little bit of guidance, they can take it so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think this, to your point, I'm trying to get stronger in calculus, right?
Mhm.
A lot of like self-study with calculus. And I'm trying to kind of get to the point where my calculus ability and my calculus level of understanding is much more innate as my algebra understanding and my geometry and my stats and whatnot in elementary math. But at one point when I was like doing some study of calculus like earlier this year, and it kind of like dawned on me, I was like, wow, like so one half of calculus is basically the slope, rate of
Yep.
change and the tangent line. So if it's the slope of the tangent line, then like, but in algebra 1, we introduced y equals mx plus b. We introduced the formula for slope. I'm like,
Yep.
what stops us from just introducing calculus at the same time, right? Because it's still the slope. Because when you get to calculus,
Yeah.
and then, well, you're expected to leverage your understanding of the slope of a straight line, right? When you're in calculus. So why not, I wonder about, like, why not just introduce a lot of those calculus concepts, in ninth grade or even in eighth grade, when you're introducing those algebra concepts. Like, what's to stop the person? I guess it's just, it's the decision of the teacher or the school system.
It's I would say it's mostly it could be a combination, but I would say it's heavily leaned upon testing towards the test
Mhm.
and trying to get them prepped up for the test and not to look bad on the teacher and so forth. And that's one of the things that I try my best to like. I get it. It's a money thing. Everything's behind the money at the end of the day. People got to sell books. People got to run schools and everything like that. They don't have time to do all this extra stuff. But honestly, they do got time. It's just on the pace of the children too. And that's the reason why I started this off talking about the stereotypes around math. That a lot of people feel as though, well, kids aren't just excited about math. Math sucks. And you don't need anything beyond a certain level of math. But it's like, if you're limiting your child, limiting your beliefs, then yeah, you're going to have those struggles, especially in the Black community, where it's like I don't say the Black community, I would say majority of the people in the impoverished community. I mean, I was one of them. I mean, shucks, who came out of it. But one of those things that's coming out of that impoverished community is that understanding that math was pretty much the way out.
Mhm.
And the reason why I stand behind that is because math taught you critical thinking skills.
Mhm.
You have to look beyond what's in front of you, going beyond that next level, like that discipline that you need to sit down and really figure out the problem. When it comes to your finances, you need to really sit down and look at the problem. Like, all right, I got this money coming in. My variable is X. I don't even know if I got a job tomorrow, but I know that my outcome has to be whatever Y is. Just pick a letter.
Yeah.
Um, to pay the bill. Hey, like my income is this, how many hours I worked is this, will equal this how much I need for my bills. And then minus all of that is what I can, splurge on later on. And
Yeah.
you can make your own slope out of that if you want to.
Yeah. That's
So
use of y equals mx plus b.
yeah.
Yeah, every day. I was talking to my students at Cheney this morning for my math methods course, and we're going over different methods of calculating percentages.
Right.
And one of the things I was telling them, I was like, you as future teachers, you have your role cannot be the importance of your role cannot be ever be underestimated. But what you have to realize is, like, you are charged with protecting, like, training your future students so that they can be able to protect themselves in certain situations. So we're going over these percentages, and I'm showing them how to calculate them using, like, the proportion method, which I like to call the Malcolm X method, because you got to cross multiply anyway, right? So it gives me
Nice.
an opportunity to evoke the ancestor. And then there's the translation method, just, translate the sentence into an equation in math language. But then there's, like, using benchmark percentages. So if we're trying to find, like, what is 43% of $500 or something,
Right.
we can break 43% down into 10% and then multiply that by 4 to get the 40%. And then
Okay.
we find 1% of 500, and then we multiply that by 3 to get the 3%. And then we just add those values, right? So, but after we come up with the answer, I'm telling them, I'm like, look, we also want to understand if our answer is reasonable, because what happens is, if you, I think it was like $220 or something, or something, around there, right? I don't remember the exact figure, but if you leave out a zero or something, or somebody leaves out a zero, and then they say, well, you're at a store in real time and this is happening, this is a real life scenario, and then somebody tells you, you're supposed to get 43% off, and then somebody tries to take off $22 instead of $220, then, and if your students, as when they become adults, they don't know that, they don't understand, oh wait, no, 43%, I know that 50% is half, and 50% of 500 would be 250.
Yep.
I know 43% is close to 50%, but it's less than 50%. So I know my dollar amount should be around 250. It should be, less than 250, but kind of close. So if they don't understand that, then they may be in a situation where somebody says, oh, well, I took $22 off. That's 43%. And then you don't have the wherewithal to be able to stand up and say, well, no, that's a mistake.
Right.
There's no way that 43% of this amount is $22.
Right.
No way. So it's a way to really protect yourself from getting robbed without a gun. So I'm just having this conversation, and I always have these conversations with these students, particularly that have interest in becoming teachers, because your job really is to teach your students to be able to protect themselves from scammers.
Yeah.
Because every scammer is not good at math, but some scammers are very good at math. And what they're also good at is identifying people that are not good at math, because that makes them easy targets. And those people are very low hanging fruit. And you can get over on those people. And, they'll rob you with a handshake and a smile, without
Every time.
So it's you got to know how to do this, and you got to know how to understand this. And we can't, like I said, we can't underestimate the importance of just, understanding the concept of a percentage, knowing how to calculate percentages, knowing different ways to calculate percentages, not only knowing how to do it on paper, but knowing how to do it mentally, and figuring out those different, ways to do mental math, just as a way to just protect yourself, especially in a capitalist society where everything's about profit. So somebody will, if they feel like they can get, more profit by scamming you, a lot of people will do it.
Right. And because you're talking about percentages, and one of the things that people talk about now is about in the stock market, they always talk about basis points.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it talks about that jargon. Because you're not inside that particular realm all the time, or that's something that you're interested in, you need to also pick up the jargon. So I'm sharing here on the screen, for those of you who are listening on the audio side of the house, I have on the screen what is called basis points. And what they say here, basis points are financial lingo that refer to a change in percentage. 1 basis point equals to 0.01%, or 0.0001. Preferably 1% equals 100 basis points.
Right.
So when you look at the stock market, and they always say, not the stock market, when you look at the when you listen to the radio or something like that, and they always say, well, the stock market went down 300 basis points. It's such a big number. It's it only went down 3%. Right. Did you really lose money? So it goes back to that percentage. If you got $20 and you lost 2% of that $20, it's only 40 cents.
Yeah, 40 cents, because 1% is 20. Yeah.
That's it. You're not really losing that much. So I always laugh when I hear about it. I'm but the only reason why this matters is because you're talking about millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, because the number 300 sounds like a lot.
Right.
Just generally speaking, we assume it's a lot, but then, yeah, if you don't know. So, that gets into unit conversions and just value, which is also something very fundamental and germane to just math that a lot of people don't get. In another class I was teaching today, we were talking about fractions, and, of course, fractions are just another version of percentages, and talking about how, we talked about equivalent fractions, and I was showing them how to, calculate, equivalent fractions, 2/3 is equivalent to, 4/6, or you can multiply by 3 and, get 6 knives, right? But what students have to understand is that the value of the fraction is about the relationship between the numbers. But if you don't understand the concept of a fraction, you won't know that. And then somebody can come along and tell you that, well, yeah, 6 ninths is more than 2/3, because look, 6 is more than 2, and 9 is more than 3. But a person that doesn't know any better and doesn't understand the concept of fractions, that fundamental concept, they'll go for that. They'll fall for that. Somebody will say, well, we got to charge you more because this is 6 knives. And where 2/3 is cheaper. That was 2/3. That one over there was 2/3, but this one is 6 knives. That's more. It's like, what do you mean? But again, like I said earlier, like some of the scammers are good at math and they're able to easily identify those that are not. So you really want to, and I guess I do want to kind of like use play on people's like emotions in this conversation, and instill like a fear, to develop a sense of urgency, to just learn as much math as possible, because it is like a way to like protect yourself.
Yeah. But also, I'm kind of cheating here because I was looking at some other things, like what is other important things about math that, obviously you do it every day. We think about it like how many steps inside a house typically. It's usually 13 steps that you got to go up 4 flight of stairs. What is a baker's dozen? Like again, it's like, what is it, 13, right?
Yeah,
So,
you got to taste test one.
right. Gotta make sure it's good. Uh, but one of the things that I'm gonna share my screen here is that so using math, what they call this thing? Um, they call this thing mathinism. Never heard of mathinism.
Oh,
But,
mathnasium. Yeah,
huh?
I've been there before. Mathnasium. They used to
Oh,
have.
mathnesium. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
they're like around the country. They got like they're like tutoring centers. It's actually not a bad like business model. It's like a little small like office space
Hmm.
and set up, and they just hire. They charge a fee for you to have access to come in, and they hire tutors, and they just have tutor. It's like a drop. They're like drop-in centers. That's how they're set up, and you can like go in there and like get tutoring.
Oh, that's really cool. Because I always heard about the other tutoring company. Was it big with a K? Kodo?
Kuman.
Kuban. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
the other one. But with mathin mathnesium.
yeah. Like gymnasium.
Oh,
Math.
gymnasium, mathnasium. Oh, gotcha. All right. Languages. It's not my strong suit. But math helps out with that too. So they say right here, math is good for your brain. A study at Stanford University indicates that children who are good at math use areas of the brain that is also show a strong cognitive task, such as a visual attention and decision making. The study indicates that the same brain regions that help you do math are associated with decision making and attention. I mean, yeah, attentional processes. So this goes back to what we were saying earlier, trying to set that baseline of if you want somebody to actually pay a lot of attention and really do deep dives in, hey, just stick with a mathematician. Keep it easy. Do you agree? Do they actually keep you focused?
I think it does because, you know, I guess through the training of working out problems, you have to maintain your focus.
Mhm.
Because there's so many details involved, and that's why like learning math is in a learning environment. It's so difficult to multitask while you're doing it, because you could miss something so easily.
Yeah.
Like students in a class, high school students in a classroom, like if you stop and look at your phone, like you could be lost just in that like split second. Well, it's not a split second, but like in that 3 second time frame when you're checking your phone to see who just texted you, like you'll be lost because you might not understand like something critical that the teacher or the professor just put on the board in that moment. So you gotta really focus, stay committed to that task.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I always try to look at too. It's like, how do we, even like you said, we both got YouTube channels, but how do we actually keep that attention going on to actually talk about topics that we're excited about? But how do we get other people to be also excited about it? I know they here for us, but also the content.
Yeah,
And because math is a fun topic to me, I actually do enjoy like solving problems and doing things like that. But that's why we do math in so many different ways.
mhm.
So like number two on this list is saying that math helps you with life skills. Someone who understands math is able to understand the basic life skills such as managing a budget. Hey, come to the show. Building furniture, forecasting, and telling time. Math helps you understand costs, balance a bank account, and subtract balances, which are essential skills as adults. I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory of my end, unless you got something to add to it.
I think I would add to that. I think math also like strengthens character.
Mm,
There are a lot of like hidden like values that you develop from like the way you approach math problems. Like if you just think about, I think about ancient Kemet, and I think about Mayat and like the seven principles of Mayat, like, you know, harmony, balance, order, truth, justice, reciprocity, and righteousness. So, well, for one thing, like when you're solving any math equation, you're really trying to find the truth. So if I solve an equation and I get x equals 5, but then I go back to the equation to check my work, and then I substitute in a 5 wherever the x is, if the left side doesn't equal the right side, then that's not true.
Right.
That's, you know, somebody's lying. Or if somebody tells me x equals 5 and then I go plug in 5 where the x is, and it says I end up with an expression or two expressions like -15 is equal to 38. I know -15 is not equivalent to 38. So it's like, whoa, like you trying to lie to me. You trying to, you know, that's not true. Right. So I think it like trains us in terms of like being very oriented towards like the truth and like what's right. And also even like balance, because when you're solving the equations, again, if I divide on the left side, I got to divide on the right side. And it teaches that, like, you know, also discipline as well, from having to like follow rules, you know, and like order of operations, you know.
Yes.
It's,
Yes.
you know, because you might want to just like, you see like 2 + 2 × 4.
Right.
And you might want to just do, 2 + 2 and then multiply by 4. It's like, no, be disciplined, follow the rules, right? So respect the rules, but at the same time, because it develops a critical thinking ability within us, I think it should also end up enabling us to be able to identify rules that are unjust and inappropriate, and then we have appropriate ways to challenge unjust rules at the same time. So we're constantly, I think we're able to, by having certain math skill set, we're able to analyze and assess the validity of certain rules, and then say, well, you know, does this make sense and is this appropriate? Because I think some people might respond to me saying, well, you know, math teaches you to follow rules, so then they might think, well, you know, they might be cynical about in response to that and say, well, oh, so math just teaches you to like just be a mindless drone and
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
like, not at all, because you're developing that critical and analytical ability.
Yep.
So somebody presents a rule and it's like, wait, no, this is inappropriate, this is inefficient, you know, or this doesn't balance, or this is unfair and inequitable, then you should be able to recognize that, and then, you know, and state that, you know. So I think it, you know, it does help with life skills, and in addition to that, it helps us, you know, with just character development and just creating like better humans, you know.
Yeah, and I think that would be really good to take a closer look at, you know, our creativity, because math, though they might give you the rules, but that one way doesn't mean it has to be everybody's exact same way,
Right.
like how they got to it. Because, like how you say, you got we said 2 + 2 = 4. Was it?
Well, the order of operation is 2 + 2 × 4.
Oh, 2 times. Yeah.
It's just planned to do the multiplication first.
Right.
Badly as you want to just go ahead and just add, just work from left to right.
Right.
You know, you got to discipline yourself and say, no, the rule is we got to multiply first before we do the addition.
Right. And so having that understanding, like, you can create and just have fun with it. Like, all right, so now that we know what 2 + 2 × 4 is, can we come up with a formula to always get that right answer?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like about it, because it also creates that creativity comes in when you have a lot of constraints. And when people feel constraint, they don't know what to do half the time. A lot of people feel like that they don't know what is the next move. I have no money right now. I don't know what to do, because I was never taught to really think outside the realm of my possibilities. And math creates that ability to do that, because you're actually it's a life skill that I think everybody should definitely, either if they don't have it right now, to hone into, because you would definitely, you're missing out. I would just say that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So back on the life skills, we got number 3 here, which says math makes you a better cook. I mean, we're not cooking in the streets, but it's pretty much the same measurements. So it says, with an understanding of math, You can realize things like a half cup of milk is the same as 8 tablespoons, or you can measure 1/4 of a cup using half measuring cup.
Mhm.
You can also double or triple the recipe to sure you always have enough food to feed your friends and family. Now, the reason why I like this is because um, when I was making a recipe, I was just following a recipe to make corn soup. They were talking about like a pound of potatoes, a pound of um, carrots, using like 2 cans of cream corn and then 4 corn on the cob. I'm like, yo, like it's just me. It's me and my wife. Like, can we have this? But I was like, you know what? I don't feel like doing the math work. I just did the whole thing. It's like, and
And
we
you
were
just
eating it for at least a week and a half. It was so much food.
yeah, y'all just had leftovers.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we slept up. I was tired. Have we tried to have anything or triple any recipes?
Say it again.
Have you tried to have a recipe or triple them just to kind of make
Yeah.
it work?
So yeah, and so sometimes though, I think the proportions. I think even if you just like if you create a proportionate amount, like you take half or whatever, it might not have the same consistency though. Because I've
Mm,
noticed that. Because like sometimes if I'm making rice or rice out of the box, and it calls for like one box calls for this much water, but then so if I'm making 2 boxes, I'm naturally thinking, okay, well I should double the water. But
right.
then it's not as it ends up being too much water though. So I think that like there's an issue with like, you know, there's some deeper math involved where you have to like kind of change the proportions when you get to a certain quantity. I think, which is something I want to look into because I always end up just like if the box says 1 cup of water for this much rice, and then if I'm doing 2 boxes, naturally I'm thinking okay 2 cups of water. But a long time ago I learned that it doesn't actually work out like that. I end up doing like one and a
Mm,
half. Like I do like 1.5 cups of water, and
mm,
I want to look more deeply into that to like figure out like why specifically like why that is or what the issue is or maybe I don't know maybe I'm just not cooking it long enough or whatever. But yeah, I've definitely done that, and I've also used this to teach my children like certain skills with like fractions and get them more familiar and fluent with like fractions and like different fractional amounts and whatnot, um, to help to show them the utility of math just in everyday life. I'm like, if you want to eat, like you got to know how to measure some things.
right. If you wanted to taste good.
Yeah, too. Yeah, yeah,
Because there was a fun conversion. I'm actually that's why I'm keep looking off to the side. I'm trying to figure out how to because this one lady did a really quick TikTok and it was on YouTube on how to convert it. But it was so visually done. When I come to it, I'll actually talk about it because I was so proud of myself when I remembered all of it. It was great. Um, so let's go on to the fourth one, which it says math increases your problem solving skills, and I think we already touched on that. So let's continue to read on it. Which
yeah.
says math helps strengthen reasoning skills and critical thinking. It helps you, it helps us think analytically about the world and reason logically. The same steps you can take to understand a problem, identify the knows and unknowns. I think they mean knowns and unknowns. It's a misprint, it looks like.
Mhm.
And then solve it can be applied to other areas of life. And I think we already kind of talked about that on the critical thinking side of the house, unless you want to add on to that.
Well, I think that this right here is something that I speak about often. Like, I think this informs us as to why so many people are deficient in mathematics and why there's really a movement, not a movement, but there's a societal status quo where the larger percentage of our people have to be deficient in math because it enables you to solve problems.
Mm,
And we also can understand that our problems are actually beneficial to other people and other groups of people. So once we solve our problem, then now that benefit is removed because it's essentially canceled out. So in order for the other groups of people to, or even other individuals, to maintain the benefit, then our problems have to be maintained. So if you impart like this skill of problem solving and like kind of like this worldview or this like just ability over larger ability of how to approach problems, not even just approach them, but how to identify them. Because a lot of people don't even know how to identify a problem.
That's
Like
facts.
they just think something is, oh, that's just how life is. Like, no, that shouldn't be normal. Like, like should not be normal. Like, what are you doing? Like, nah, like just because like, but a lot of times people are desensitized and they feel so defeated because they've grown up this way or like their community always looked that way. And it's like, no, it's not supposed to look like that. No matter how long it has looked like that, it's not supposed to be like that. So we first have to be able to identify problems, but then if you become the type of person that like has the type of thinking which lends itself to kind of always being like problem solving mode, right? Then problems end up getting solved, you know. But so we can't have, or for this society to maintain itself, being like the type of oppressive and overly exploitative society that it is, you can't have these large groups of people that have this ability.
Right.
So I think that there's nothing coincidental about the fact that there's so many millions of people that will tell you like, no, I was never good at math, or believe that they weren't that good at math. Because I also believe some people, they're too hard on themselves,
Yep.
and I think that they're inappropriately judging their mathematical ability when in fact they're actually better at math than they think or than they give themselves credit for. But it's all about the metrics. Like, what metrics are you using? You know, like, and who are you comparing yourself to? Like, are you comparing yourself to, when you were in school, like, were you in school, in class with somebody like one of my children who was, doing, algebra, basically algebra 1 at 6 years old. And then, you didn't have that experience. So, y'all in 7th grade or 8th grade, and the teacher put something up on the board, and, my son or my daughter have been saying that for years, but you saying it for the first time. So, my son does the problem, knocks it out. And, then you looking at him like, wow, maybe it must be something wrong with me because I don't know how to do that. It's like, you don't know his backstory. And I just wonder like how many people have been in that situation and they saw somebody else in their class that was like advanced, and then they compared themselves to that person when they shouldn't have, because that wasn't a good, like I said, that wasn't a good metric. That person for them to use.
Right. And with that being said, because I don't know, but then you go back and forth to that comparative skill set of like, oh, they much better than I am than they are to me, and so forth. And I'm like, you don't know the backstory. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing on your free time? Obviously, they doing a lot better on their free time. So,
Because even like myself, like I had those moments where, I sat in class sometimes and I'm like, wow, he gets this pretty quickly or she gets this pretty quickly. But then I didn't know. I'm like, I wasn't even considering like maybe they have a personal tutor. Like I never had tutoring when I was younger. Like maybe they had personal tutoring, private tutoring again, like every day or like 2 days a week or 3 days a week. So really when they come to school, they're using school in the manner that I would like for the Black community to move towards, which is, if we're dealing with schools that we don't control politically and economically as an institution, I want for schools to just be a space for practice.
right.
Right. So and the only way that can happen though is if the community or the households are actually providing the primary education. So like, yeah, like, okay, 10th grade, 11th grade, you're assigned to take trigonometry in this school, but really when I go to class, I'm listening to your instruction, but I'm really here to just practice because my community already taught me trigonometry,
Right.
or learning trigonometry at home and in my neighborhood, on my block, in the community centers or wherever. Like my community is equipped, which is why another reason I created the YouTube channel is because I want our community members to be able to, go understand the trigonometry and then teach it to the children in the community and on the block. So, but a lot of people that have like more preparation, what they're doing is they're using school as a place for practice. So when I was in school and I saw like somebody that was, excelling or performing what I thought was in a way that I thought was better than me and caught on to things better than me, they were using school as a space for practice. They weren't really as concerned about like necessarily learning and, in terms of like getting primary instruction from that teacher. They were just practicing what they already knew because they might have learned it somewhere else.
Right. And I think I had one of my students was learning a lot at home because they really liked math and they were learning it from like their uncle and they were
Mhm.
learning different ways to do multiplication.
Yeah.
And so I try to do the Singapore math, which is like, I think it's almost like how they split it into like almost like a T section and then multiply it out that way. I was like, you know what, y'all doing too much. So I tried it. I was like, yo, teach me something today. So I was like, you know what, you're pretty fast with this. Obviously, you had some practice. And I was like, how long did it take you? He was like, oh, I've been turning up all night long. I was like, all right, well, give me all night long to figure this out too. Okay. Like
Yeah.
Mr. Weaver don't got all of the answers.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Singapore math is real popular. Like I've never taught using that curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
but I would like to like examine it more. Like I'm all for like those types of different like cultures and like as a like academics as a expression of nationalism. Like I like that because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm from Singapore and then you tell me, okay, we're doing Singapore math, or like then I migrate to the United States, and then I go to a school and we're using Singapore math. Like I gotta like poke my chest out. I gotta feel great. Like wow, like y'all we're using my math, and
Right.
I think we should do that. I think Black people should do that. I think people of African descent should do that. Like we gotta have like African math,
Oh, we do. We
and
do.
but
It's just been
give
colonized.
it and call it that. You know what I'm saying? Call it that, and
Call it that.
people accept that. Like, this is so we can feel a sense because I think that's another thing that holds us back. We don't have a sense of ownership over mathematics. Like, we
Well,
feel like
well, let's
don't make
let's give out some black math terms then. When I say, it takes a minute, is that black math? Like
it is because well we got to but I think with that that's I like that you brought that up. I think we do got to have a concrete um description for that amount of time though. You
right.
know, but that's hard to do though. But I think that's but see
Right.
that's it's a like a double-edged sword because like we want to have a concrete amount of time for a minute, but I think that's part of the beauty of a minute is that it's not a concrete amount of time. It is kind of like amorphous, right? It's a
Right.
little like it's like you kind of like you got to kind of feel it. It's very subjective. It's very subjective, so that makes it difficult. You kind of just gotta be in tune with the culture to kind of understand, or maybe the
So
inflection of their voice when they say it. It's like you kind of can judge based on that, like how many minutes, how many seconds, or is it like hours? You talking about weeks or whatever? You know,
so in other words, let's say this, like me, like you went to Morgan. So going from Morgan to DC, we were like, oh, that's gonna take a minute. Or even like going from, Maryland to California, oh, that's gonna take a minute. Like like
it is comparative.
right.
Yeah,
So the comparison is in the longevity of how it's said,
yeah, yeah.
not what was said. I got you. We can use that math all day. I like that math actually. My wife hates it because for distance, because I always use distance. It's like, oh yeah, it's just around the corner. Around the corner is like a half hour away.
Like it's relative. Yeah, yeah. Around the corner, like it's relative.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we
but
use relative math.
yeah, because it's relative to something else. Like, like somebody was like going from Baltimore to DC, like, yeah, that's gonna take a minute. But, if you compare that to going from Baltimore to Atlanta, it's like, oh,
Right.
that's quick.
Yeah.
It's quick, right? But going from East Baltimore to West Baltimore, like going to DC is gonna be much longer,
Right.
you know. Unless you're talking about like a certain time of day, like rush hour, like you take 695 to go around, you know,
Yeah.
because there's times when it's not that much traffic you might be able to get from Baltimore to DC in the same amount of time as you can get from, East Baltimore to West
East.
Baltimore
Yeah.
during rush.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
Right.
it's rough.
Or you could take what's it called, North Avenue straight across, and then be like, yeah, that's gonna take you a
Yeah,
minute. Right.
you got to all the lights. You don't catch all the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So one last one I got on here is what do you call it? Math will help you in your career.
Mhm.
So they say obviously mathematicians and scientists use math every day, but they're not the only careers that involve math. Basic arithmetic is used in factory assembly lines, accounting, software development, construction, the medical field, and more.
Mhm.
I can tell you this in construction, if your measurements are off, man, so much money in wasted materials. I just had to spend so much money in what's it called for the renovation of my duplex. And they were measuring at least 4 times before they cut because they didn't have that much material.
Mm.
But it's one of those of like we measured the kitchen at least 5 times before we even went to go buy the hardware. As far as like to say, make sure we got the right counter spaces, make the right countertops, the sink measurements. What's the measurement for the width of the stove, the width of the um what's the thing, the refrigerator, and then also the what size of dishwasher I was going to get, or not one at all, but like they got the 18-inch versus 24-inch, what type of cabinet space you need, like these things matter. And also like where the light plugs or outlets are going to be at in the wall. Is it going to be 24 inches away, or we're going to do 46 inches away from each outlet to make sure we get something at the counter so they can plug stuff in while they at the sink? Like, you know, chef's math is life. I don't know.
It is. It is. That's why I believe there's definitely some type of there has been some type of plot, to keep us mathematically illiterate. It reminds me of, like, because we know the stories of, chattel slavery and how it was illegal, for black people to learn how to read,
Right.
in places, and it was illegal to teach black people how to read in many places. So I see math as like the same way, whereas, literacy is, and that's another issue too. Like, a lot of people are functionally illiterate, and because they can, but we don't recognize it necessarily because they can recognize syllables and recognize words, and they can pronounce the words correctly, but they lack the ability to critically analyze what they're actually saying when they're
Mhm.
reading or what they're seeing on the page. They may not really understand, like, okay, well, what does this mean though? Like, you just read that paragraph, but
Right.
what is the implications of the information in that paragraph? Are you able to critically analyze? And there's a lot of that going on. But I think there's also a lot of like mathematical illiteracy. But I think also that with the mathematical illiteracy, it's almost like it's so popular and so
Right.
widespread that there's no shame involved in it, or not as much shame involved in it. Whereas almost like people trauma bond and are kind of, they feel like a kinship with other people that are also bad at math. Like, almost like, people that are bad at math unite. Let's unite. Like, come together. But um, and I understand where that comes from, because it could be a very, like, emotionally uncomfortable experience to have been in like elementary school or middle school or high school when you had that educational traumatic experience where somebody made you feel dumb, whether it was a classmate or whether it was a teacher even, or somebody, or maybe one of your parents yelling at you when they were trying to help you with the homework, but they were really frustrated because they didn't know how to explain it to you in a way that made sense, and then they took out.
It made sense to you though. Right.
Yeah, it made sense to them, but then it didn't make sense to you. So they projected their frustration onto you as if it was your fault for not
Mhm.
understanding, right? So a lot of people have those types of experiences, and but I'm just trying to get off, like, by having more conversations like this. I'm trying to get our people to say, you know what, you know, I need to learn math. I need to understand it, and I can do it. Like, it's doable. Like, it's not just, well, yeah, I'm not in school no more. So, like, that's part of that chapter of my life is over. I don't need to worry about that ever again. Because we got children. We got
Yeah.
children. Some of us who have grandchildren, we got nieces and nephews, we got young people that really need the support. And I think too, like with in terms of the so-called new math and the way math is taught now, and parents not understanding these methods, and school systems not really teaching parents these methods, kind of like leaving it up to the parents to, be self-motivated to learn on their own. That loss in homework help time, it kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Erodes the familial bond, that
Right.
was there, because you don't have that, like for the math time, you don't have that half hour, 45 minutes that you might have used to, every day. Like, you sit down, at least Monday through Thursday, maybe sit down with your child at the kitchen table or the dining room table, or, in the living room or wherever. And like, y'all go over math work. And then now it's like, well, I don't know how to do that stuff, so I can't even help you with it. Or when I show you how to do it, my method is not the method that your teacher wants
Best
you.
teacher to yeah.
So I can't really help you. So then I think that has like long-term consequences, in terms of the bonding that is lost or like missed out on. And then, so it's like, we not, there's less of a family bond. So then that may lead to other like dysfunctional behaviors long term, where students, young people may be more like, may end up becoming more street oriented,
Yeah.
just something like that seems to be totally unrelated. But it's like, well, from third grade to sixth grade,
The
when they,
same.
bonding with their parents or their, grandparents, just doing math homework, that time was gone. It was taken away.
Yeah.
And then in that time, they didn't, because a lot of times it's like mentorship. Tutoring is really a great way to mentor and provide mentorship. And it's like that mentorship didn't happen in that space the way it could have, all because the parents didn't know, how to do the math homework. Which brings me to why one of my initiatives with all this math is we're going to be doing new math parent workshops.
That is cool. Okay. So before we get to the new map parent workshop, because that does actually sound really interesting. One of the things that um I wanted to share is that I have to say, like, how can we as people keep that energy going, even though it feels like we can say to them, "Hey, we don't know." Will this be a great opportunity to have the child shine and say, "Teach me"? Like, the parent had to be humble enough to say, "You know what? I don't know, but teach me what the teacher taught you." And it's okay to allow your child to know a little bit more. But I've seen a lot of streams and reels about like parents trying to do workout stuff like that so they can dominate their kids at all ages. But it's like
Yeah,
at
yeah,
some point you gotta let yeah, give them a little win. It's like the video game. Let the child win, let the player win, and build that confidence. Because I think what that will do is help, like you said, bring that bond back, bring that trust back. Like, hey, the child will probably even pay more attention to the teacher because they got to go home and teach their parent.
yeah, yeah. That would be ideal. If they
Yeah,
could, teach their parent. If the parent was willing to be open to that,
right.
no.
But yeah, I wonder if, because that's one of the things I had to do with the teachers, with the parent teacher conferences. I would always tell them, bring them one on one with the parents and be like, whatever you do, don't say that you don't like math. Because they're going to come in here and repeat what you said. And then they're not going to want to learn math because you don't need math. And it's like, well, you seeing them being successful without the math. And I even had one parent was like, well, can you teach them more practical things with the math? Like, what are they going to use this math for inside that program?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, like, how can they got to be a balance. So they enjoyed it. It's just now they want to take it to the next level. And I think that's where we're missing is that relationship between teacher and student and parent and child. And I think this is a great topic. So um, I know you're about to jump into the new program that you're working on. So you can tell a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the new math parent workshops is something that I'm going to be doing with middle schools, and I have a deal in the works with a local middle school here in Philadelphia, and also an after school program down in Baltimore. So the idea is just really a response to like parents just consistently saying like they don't understand the new math. So I'm like, well, I could teach you the new math,
Right.
at least some of it, at least, and also to like develop confidence. Because I think a lot of parents don't have the confidence to think that, they could go on YouTube and learn it on their own. Some parents do. And some parents do go on YouTube and look up videos. Hopefully they go to my YouTube channel and look up my, but
Right.
some parents, they get it where they can, So but I want for parents to understand the connection between the so-called old math and the so-called new math. I want them to see also the value of their children learning the new math, which is, it's a lot of different, values in it, like, options in terms of methods of problem solving.
Yep.
Also, it prepares them to think out more algebraically at an earlier age. A lot of the Common Core math does that. And also, yeah, like you mentioned, like that utility, like you said, the parents would also ask you to teach their children practical things, like
Right.
with these new math methods. There is a way to do practical things, like deal with like record keeping and paying bills, and calculating different things when you're driving or you're traveling places, and things of that nature. So I want for parents to be able to take some ownership over the education of their children by understanding what it is that their children are learning in the classroom. So, and also it really helps everybody, because it helps the teachers, because then the teachers have more continuity in their classroom and they don't have to reteach as much, because when they introduce something on a Monday morning in class and then they assign a homework, and then when the children go home and don't really do the homework because they don't understand it and their parent doesn't understand it enough to be able to help them with it, now that child comes back to school and it's almost like
Frustrated.
over. Whereas if they're able to understand the homework, and even if they don't fully understand it, but they're like engaged with it, and even going through some type of like what we call like productive struggle,
Mm.
at home, like with their parent. Then when they get back to school on Tuesday, the next day, then they're able to have some like specific questions, pertaining to like what they didn't understand, that hopefully like the teacher can address, you know, and then you might show that like, well, okay, there's just this one minor aspect that you didn't get. So now we can just focus in on that, and then we can like take it from there. But yeah, new math parent workshops. And it's not just for parents. I mean, grandparents, are allowed. It would be catered to grandparents, uncles, aunts, older cousins, godparents. You know, anybody in the community that wants to be able to help children, whether they be their children or you know um, children in the community, like with mathematics and just understand mathematics.
Yeah, you got a question from Anne who asks, this is on YouTube. So if you guys listening to this on the audio side of the house, it's on YouTube. Asking, are tutoring centers keeping up with the latest math methods in schools?
So, I mean, judging from like, I don't have a tutoring center per se, but I do have tutors that we tutor students. So, I mean, judging from what I do, I would assume that they are, because we're keeping up with the latest math methods. Because I mean, we have to, because if the students are coming home with these problems, I mean, we gotta, if we want to be their tutor, we got to know how to help them with whatever they're doing, whatever the method is as well, because we can't just be like the parents that are like, nah, you're doing long division, we're not doing partial quotients, like we're not doing, like we
Right.
if you're doing partial quotients, then we got to show you partial quotients. So I know that's what we do. So I assume that other tutoring companies and tutoring organizations are doing the same thing. um I think I think they would have to be.
Gotcha. All right. And this one is from Northern Bell. One of my sons is a mathlete in middle school. I'm so proud of him. Oh,
Yeah,
that is awesome.
yeah. Tell them, nurture that. Definitely nurture that.
Yeah.
Keep it up. Like that's a big deal. Like, and our community doesn't like doesn't uh
Gotta give a little round of applause to that.
collectively we don't applaud that enough. Like
Right.
we applaud. We're conditioned to like applaud sports and whatnot. And sports is cool, but it's not all about sports. It shouldn't be all about sports. I think we have enough accolade. We can share some of the accolades and start like highlighting like the young brothers and the young sisters that are excelling at math and science and I mean all of the academic disciplines. You know, to make education seem cool. You know.
Yeah, and the thing about it, and that's the reason why I wanted to bring up this topic was because of the ability of having that flexibility to contact and actually have fun with a hot topic such as math, and or not really a hot topic, a boring topic such as math. But to me, it's boring in the sense of that's what society calls it. But to me, I actually enjoy it. I have a lot of great time doing it because you can represent it in so many different ways. It's everywhere you look at it. Like right now we got our shapes. They're rectangles that fit inside a square rectangle. Like, you know, I don't want to go that far deep into it, but when you got a geographical mind, you think in three-dimensional spaces, which is great for people who want to do space research and look at space junk all the time. Like, there are jobs out there for that. You guys, if you actually really want to give a phone call in, I'm not sure how much time you got left.
I got time.
Okay. So if you guys want to actually call in, I'm closing down my Instagram feed so that people can make their phone calls. But you can call in at 833-699-2558. And you will be live here on the show. So I just want to make sure that I close out all my stuff so y'all can make this phone call. And then, we can just ask you questions right here, right now, which would be great. So again, that phone number is 833-699-2558 if you guys want to make a phone call. All right. So having all of this information and having all this math, I had to look up the conversion chart because it was actually so cool. So I had to recreate the art drawing. So for those of you who like visuals like I do when I'm trying to learn things, my calculus teacher was the first person ever to teach me to actually start writing things down. So one of the things he did, I'm actually putting this up here. So if you see this little house, the house represents 1 ounce. And within 1 ounce, you need 2 tablespoons. So you get 2 tables. Don't laugh at my work.
Okay.
Okay. So within each tablespoon, there are 3 teaspoons. This is my spoons. I'm horrible at drawing. So, don't judge me. But that's how the easier way to look at it. If you want to learn out about how to get an ounce. That was actually pretty cool.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Nobody ever taught me that. I'm going to borrow that, and then I'm going to share that with students.
Awesome. Because I thought it was actually pretty, like something simple visually to represent all of it. I thought it was actually a pretty cool way to look at it.
That's one of my favorite parts of teaching is, that creativity, and being able to recognizing relationships between like, different math concepts, different quantities and amounts, and just being able to say like, wait, okay, so yeah, I can like, because that he might have came up with that your calculus teacher might have came up with that on his own, or if he didn't, somebody that told him about it might have came up with it on their own, and
right.
it does give you like a sense of accomplishment when you realize like, oh, I can like, represent this in this way. And so with hystematics, my teaching framework, where I'm combining history with math to use math to teach history and to use history to teach math, I do that very often. Like I'm always thinking of like connections between like African American history or African history and like mathematics. Like I think about like, I don't know, an example is like radical equations. Like when you solve a radical equation, it's essentially 2 steps generally: isolate the radical and then eliminate the radical. And I think about like our history, and I think about like COINTELPRO, and I think about like political prisoners and people that like, when the government's like, okay, we got to stop this guy. So we're going to isolate him, try to isolate him from the Black community. And then after that, we're going to eliminate him. Either we're going to essentially murder him or her, or put them in jail for like 70 years, or put them in jail, like, give them a life sentence or something, like, like Mumia Harlem or something. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, so I'm like, wow, like these are the connections between like our real lived history and these mathematical concepts. So it's like a way to remember them and also like attach a story and a narrative to the math concepts,
Yeah, I never thought about that. So can you give us like one example that you've used that's been helpful?
Yeah, I mean, so that's one, but also something I've been working on is, these Malcolm X methods of mathematics. Because think about like the Pythagorean theorem, and we know that Pythagoras, at least many of us know that Pythagoras actually studied in ancient Kemet, even though the Europeans kind of identify a squared plus b squared equals c squared as his. Well, it's not. So by
It's
saying
not.
that it is, they're saying that it belongs to Europeans, and it's something that the Greeks developed, which means that they're saying that the Europeans developed it, but we know that not to be true. We know who we studied under. Um, but there's so many operations where you have to go in a diagonal, orientation. So every time I call those Malcolm X methods of mathematics, right? If I'm solving a proportional equation and I got to cross multiply, that's Malcolm X method of mathematics. If I'm cross canceling, if I'm multiplying fractions and I'm cross canceling, to simplify the fractions, that's Malcolm X method. What else? So there's a way where like I factor quadratic trinomials
Mhm.
when a is greater than 1. So your lead coefficient, if anybody listening, your lead coefficient is like not 1. Because when the lead coefficient is 1, it's kind of easy. It's just like reverse FOIL or whatever, right? But what I do is, because when you go on the internet and in some textbooks, they call it the diamond method, where you
Mhm.
draw x anyway, and then you take the product of the first of your lead coefficient and your constant, and then you put that in the top of the x, and then the middle term coefficient you put that in the bottom of the x. So I'm like, whoa, this is an x anyway. So yeah, this is Malcolm X method too. But what I do is like, so I find the two numbers, and then I expand the trinomial, and I to 4 terms using the two numbers now on the sides of the x, and now I factor by grouping. But when I'm factoring by grouping, it becomes like a miniature history lesson, because I mentioned, the two organizations that Malcolm X founded before he was assassinated, the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, and also the Organization of Afro-American Unity, and him being the common factor in those. So we have the binomials that are the common factor, but so the binomial kind of represents Malcolm X, and then the outside terms are the two separate organizations. So then when you rearrange it, and then you get your final answer, you know. And then you have some like latitude to like discuss other things. Like I recently I was in Jackson, Mississippi at a conference this past weekend, and this elder was telling a story about how Malcolm X invited Fannie Lou Hamer to Harlem to speak, because of all the work that she was doing, like with SNCC and with the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party in like 1964 and all of those types of things. So while doing the math, we can talk about our history, at the same time. And, it gives the math more like meaning. And I think it also, again, it attaches a narrative to it. So it'll make the math easier to remember, and that's the essence of like hystematics. That's just one example or a few examples, really.
Yeah, and one of the things, because I was reading, because I'm getting prepared to do my first like public out in the world, I guess you could say paid talk, and one of the things is telling stories. And telling stories is the number one way that a lot of people can remember, because they will all forget the stats. Like, unless you got some type of visual, some type of aha moment that really made it stick. Um, and also the short period of time of capturing people's attention. And one of the things about capturing people's attention is like how we've been on this video for what, an hour for 15 minutes at this time. But it's like people's attention spans change, but also it's like, what are we doing to actually contain that information? And also one of the things that we did, and both of you and I did, was talk about the stories on how math has changed our lives,
Mhm.
how it impact our lives, how we've seen it impact other people's lives, increase our income, provide different jobs to people. And as Anne mentioned, that she learned math is basically from baking. Like it tastes good to learn math. Like I don't know who else in the right mind just feel as though they can just get by without any inkling of what math is to some degree. So telling the story, and I think a lot of you who are listening, and even ourselves, if there is something that has really changed your life and math has really changed your life, I really and highly recommend to share that story. If you are a parent and you have kids, kids love to hear your story, love to hear how you got to where you are today, just to kind of see like how they can relate and see themselves in your story. So, by all means, if you don't like math, it's okay, but to kind of share with them what math has allowed you to do thus far and show them the wins, but
Mhm.
also show you how you overcame some of those issues. So, like, you can say, like, hey, in third grade, I really didn't like math, but what I did was whatever. Like, I took summer classes, I read a lot of books, used a calculator. We just had math games. Like, I played games with my dad or mom or whatever when I was growing up. Like, or uncle or whoever in your community. Community is air quotes here, meaning like, somebody that came in the house that you can actually had that normal conversation with. Having those open ended discussions with your child can help them a lot more than any teacher can do. The teachers, we can tell stories all day, but it's like, will they actually be able to see that? I don't know. But the more they hear the stories, the more they hear the practical applications on how to utilize math will take people so much further than where they currently are today. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this particular topic because it's mixing finances and math and also habits in that same realm. So because this is a habit show, can can you provide a what is a habit to get better at math? Like, what is the one thing that people can do to get better at math?
Make sure that you know, at a minimum, your multiplication facts up to 12 times 12.
Mm,
I think that's a fundamental thing that a lot of people don't know. They don't have memorized. And now, as an adult, with an iPhone or an Android, and you got a calculator app. People feel like, well, what's the point of that? But it really does. Because a lot of the algebra that people try to learn in school, the algebra becomes too difficult. It becomes very labor intensive when it shouldn't be,
right.
because the lacking fundamentals. So it's like you're trying to solve an equation, and it's like a two-step equation, but you're sitting there trying to figure out like, oh, I got to do 9 times 7, but I don't know what 9 times 7 is. So
Right.
now you become anxious because you don't know what 9 times 7 is, and then it's an algebra class that you were in, and you didn't know 9 times 7 off the top of your head. So now, but you're thinking like, oh, algebra is hard. It's not
Right.
algebra.
It's you.
It's arithmetic. It's arithmetic. It was the
It is
arithmetic.
like, yeah.
You didn't know 9 times 7.
Yeah.
But like, so math, the algebra gets scapegoated as the culprit. But it
Mm,
wasn't the algebra. It was the 9 times 7 that you didn't know, or like you didn't know how to add fractions, and you needed to be able to add fractions, and you didn't know how to add fractions, but you were in an algebra 2 class or a geometry class. So I think one of the habits is make sure you know your multiplication facts at a minimum up to 12 times 12, from 1 times 1 up to 12 times 12, and practice on a daily basis.
okay.
Practice on a daily basis.
So should they get like a cheat sheet? Because I believe you got something on your page, don't you? That they can get for free?
I have the blank multiplication table templates. Yeah, they're free. You can just print them out. They're PDFs. They go up to 12 by 12 and 15 by 15.
All
You
right.
know,
I'm gonna share this for the folks that are watching right now. So for those of you who are listening, if you go to aboutthismath.com
all that,
forward slash downloads.
all,
Mm,
all the math.com.
all this man. God dang it. because all this math.
Nobody
dot
did that.
com-
You're thinking of your show title. You were thinking
Yeah,
of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
All this math.com/downloads. And he has two printables. So you got a 12 by 12 printable and also a 15 by 15 table.
Yeah.
Um,
This section is a little empty, it kind of reminds me of like the poppy stores that don't have nothing on the shelves, so they're selling dope out of there, right? But 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 my website is actually in the process of being updated. It's in the process of being updated right now, so it might not look like this like next week. It might actually be a little more like fancy.
it's part of the evolution, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I like it. I like that the fact that you keep it simple. There's no issues here. And if you guys go to the website now, go ahead on and download it. And just like you said, just do one of these once a month, once a week?
No, I would say daily if you can.
Daily? Oh, do one of these daily?
Yeah, especially if you got children, like do it with them. Like do it like a competition.
See who could do it faster.
Yeah, you can rate. And you know what? At first, because this how I introduced my son to it. Like I had him using a calculator when he was like 5 or 6. I had some construction paper, like a big piece of huge
Like
construction
paper.
Yeah, I drew the lines, I drew the vertical lines, drew the horizontal lines, and I did the calculator this way. I just had him use the calculator and just multiply everything. And then he wrote them in. And then we just practicing on a daily basis. The 4s, the 5s, the 6s, the 7s. And then, eventually he had them memorized. And I think people gotta memorize there's another thing too. Memorize the multiplication facts, but another one of my recommendations is memorize all the factors of every number from 1 to 150.
Okay.
But I'm gonna just say 150.
But the factors of what 1, 2, 3, like odd numbers, and
A lot of them are prime. So
right, they're gonna be prime numbers, yeah.
And so it seems like a lot more than what it is, but I mean, you just want to know, like, off the top of your head, like, okay, what are the factors of 16? Like, what are the factors of 64? What are the factors of 50? Like, because when you get to those algebraic problems where you got to just know factors,
right? You got to
know them. You don't want to have to. Again, you don't want things to be too labor intensive. You just want to know it,
right?
You can just you're looking for like a LCD. All right, so what are the
lowest common denominator for those of you wondering?
What do they have in common? What do these two numbers have in common? Oh, okay. I know that these numbers, are factors of this number, so therefore these numbers have to be, this is the lowest common denominator or lowest common multiple of between these two numbers. Again, like that memorization piece. I know some people in education push back on memorization, but I'm like, I think memorization is good. I think you should know what you're memorizing, like conceptually, where it comes from.
Right.
But I still think you should memorize. You should memorize multiplication facts. You should memorize like a lot of things, in math. You should memorization is just helpful because again, when you get to the point, like I think we should know how to manually do multiplication, but at a certain point, we shouldn't be multiplying by hand 395 times 7,826. Like we shouldn't be writing that down on paper. We should be using a calculator for that. But we should know how to do it though, and know how to do it in multiple ways.
Right.
Because when you're young, you're gonna learn many ways to multiply those types of numbers, and by doing that, you're gonna develop fluency. So it's kind of like you graduate into I can use a calculator now, but I've already developed the skill and also the secondary skills of understanding just numbers. Like I just understand how numbers work and how they work together and the relationships between numbers and processes.
Well, I wanted to say about that because when you're talking about the lowest common denominator, right, or at least the lowest common multiple, the cool thing about being able to break things down, because you have things memorized, you can break it down to the last memorized number or factor that you recall. So you don't have to go that far down, like how you say your multiples. If you already know 4 times 4 is 16, you don't have to break it down like, okay, well, 2 times 2, and then you got 2 times 2 over here too. And like, okay, now I know this, and now I can add them all the way across. Because you already memorized, you don't have to go that deep, if that makes sense. And so we already know 2, then that can break down to 1, and, like, we don't have to go that far down. And having that memory, so I was actually thinking about, it's like, huh, so if you have it memorized, you can go far down as if you want to, 12, 13. Like, as a pure math major, I think we had to memorize, the multiples up to 20. We had to memorize everything. So that was our test, and trust me, I was doing this at least 5 times a day, if not more, for the 12 times table, and then I had to take it beyond and keep adding 1 all the way up till I got to 20 to memorize them by heart, because we had to do a lot of, factors of each one. So we had to do, okay, well, then what is the factor of 144? I was like, "All right, that's 12." Then it
Right.
was like, "All right, what's 169?" I was like, "All right, that's 13." Then we had to do so many other ones. We had it all the way up. So he kept doing that, and I was like, "Great." And then he'll fail us, like fail a lot of people so quickly because of it. But I want to get to some of these comments that I thought was actually pretty interesting. So Northern Bell, thank you for rocking with us this long. I mean, I gotta give it to you because you've been with us. I gotta give you some air horns on this one. So rocking with us for so long. So you say yes. I remember having to do multiplication facts up to 12 every morning as soon as we got up to school in the 2nd and 3rd grade. Wow. And they don't do that. They don't push that anymore. Was it now my question is for you, Miss Bell, the the parents doing it? Were your parents pushing that, or were the teachers pushing it? So that's my question. I don't know. Did you when you were a kid, did you actually have to do these too? Like for the 2nd, 3rd grade?
I don't remember what grade it was, but I know I had to memorize them. Yeah, I know I had to memorize them, and yeah, I guess I took it for granted, like how helpful that was, and I didn't realize how much of a foundation that it gave me having
Mhm.
multiplication facts memorized. I remember in 7th grade we had to memorize the perfect squares from 1 times 1 up to 25 times 25,
Oh geez.
and I highly recommend that.
Yeah,
That's
that's a good one.
very helpful as
Mhm.
well. Um, yeah, just perfect squares. Like I know cubes. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
up to 10 times 10. That's kind of off the top of my head. I know the cubes up to 10 times 10. I don't know anything beyond 10. I mean up beyond 1,000.
Right. Because what we did was when you get to a higher mass, we didn't go over 3. So I was like, all right, cool, I can deal with this. Because it started going to this thing's concave, the concavity of the graphs, and they don't concave or not. Just we had to figure those out. I was like, all right, I can deal with that. Now somebody did ask or suggested, maybe they did. They said that there's a grid for factors. Are you planning on doing a PDF for that?
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I did want to come up with like some type of like worksheet, um, just for factors. Oh, also uh, fraction and decimal equivalents.
That would
Never,
be cool.
I never created that. I hand wrote it out like a year
Mm,
ago, 2 years ago, but I just never like, put it into like a soft copy, like online. Because that's another great skill, like knowing all the conversions from fractions to decimals. And once you know the decimal, then you know the percentages. So then
yeah.
you like the equivalencies between like fractions and percentages. You know, um, yeah, that's something else.
All right. Miss Bell says those story problems help me still, especially. I mean, I guess especially before Google Maps and GPS became so available, because I could easily figure out how long it would take me to go somewhere while traveling.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about maps, but maps is definitely needed for math. It's all math actually.
yeah. Volume 2 of how to use all this that comes out. I have an outline already. That's one of the examples I'm gonna use. Um, how, like when you're on a highway and it says like the digital sign tells you like the distance to a certain landmark or to the next highway that you might be jumping off to get on.
Mhm.
It's distance and time. And
Mm,
it was like to keep myself like, you know, cognitively sharp. But like I challenged myself to like calculate, well, what speed is that information based upon?
Right. And I do the same. Yeah.
So what I want people to do is be able to say, all right, well, if they're telling me that it's going to take like 15 minutes to get here, right, to get to that point, but they're telling me that based upon a speed of, once I do the calculation, I know it's like, okay, 50 miles an hour. Then I'm like, well, hold up. So if that means if I drive faster than 50 miles an hour, then it's
Right.
going to take me less than 15 minutes to get there. Or if I,
Mhm.
slower than 50 miles an hour, it's going to take me more than 15 miles to get there, or 15 minutes to get there. So just things like that, like just small things like that we find in everyday life that we can just do, while you're driving, just do that use that D equals RT formula. And then, you end up doing R equals D divided by T, distance divided by time,
Right.
and do the conversion. But then you also get to do the conversion for time, because it'll tell you in minutes, but we're dealing with miles per hour. So the minutes really become a fraction of an hour. So if it tells you 12 minutes, you're not dividing by 12. That's like a rookie mistake, right? You don't divide by 12. You divide by 12 out of 60,
Yep.
which is 1/5, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's going to be that's an example of the type of example that'll be in volume 2. Because that's something else that, like, adults can do when they're driving. Show your children, because the real thing is, like, if you have children that are doing this type of math just randomly when they're in a relaxed environment, they're in your car, you're a parent, you're a grandparent, you're an uncle, an aunt, an older cousin, whoever, and these children look up to you and they trust you and they love you, and then they're doing math, mathematical calculations like in their head like that, and they're doing it on a regular basis, and it becomes a habit. Then when they go into school, into a math class, like, there's nothing to stop them, because
Yeah.
a lot of the math that they're going to be introduced to in the curriculum is very similar to that, and they're going to have the confidence already. They're going to have that strong confidence, because they're like, I do math all the time. Kind of like, students that, like, we if English is your first language, you speak English all the time. So a lot of the anxiety that people have around mathematics, they don't have around ELA or English class, because they practice it so much, like
Right.
from infancy, like when they're hearing adults around them, older siblings around them speak using the English language. But a lot of households aren't having mathematical conversations.
So a lot of households are having a lot of conversations, like, because I
Yeah,
had kids when they were going home, they was like, "Yeah, I don't see my mom," because they working like 2 or 3 jobs. And
that
then
too.
they wake up, they might see them for a hot second just to kinda get them on the bus, but that's it.
Yeah. And I hate that parents have to make that decision, because it's like, people can say, yeah, you should spend more time with your kids, but all right, well, I got to work 2 jobs.
Give
Got
me
to
money. Right.
my kid. Like, if I don't work 2 jobs, I can spend more time, and I'm like living in a shelter. Like, we're
Yeah.
not going to live. And I hate that, we live in a system, in a society where, parents have to make that choice, you know?
Yeah, and my mom was one of those people who had to make that choice, and I had to learn pretty much on my own. And to the point where it's like now as I'm older, and a lot of people don't realize, like, you kinda in your ways at the age of 8, and then you kinda figure out that, all the stuff you were taught up to age of 8, you figure out at age 30 that, like, "Hey, you know what? I need to reprogram myself." It usually takes that long. So, here we are. Um, it's just like, and that's my goal now, is to try to, how do we reach those parents or the adults, um, that are doing that hustle, that grind day to day to get out of that situation? And can math really solve that problem? Is math, because they weren't good at math, is the reason why they in that predicament that they're in now?
Yeah.
It could be yes, it could be no, but it also could be, hey, it depends. A lot of people, there's a lot of areas here. Okay. I'm not shaming or downplaying any situation. I'm just saying, it's like, how can we reach some of those people who have fallen off and bring them back to where they want to be at? And with that, I just gotta give another air horn, man. Miss Bell is out here getting it. She said that, yes.
Did she? Northern Bell? Do you know about the YouTube channel? Hopefully, you know about the YouTube channel. You're subscribed, and you know you and like and share the videos.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe. Now, the reason why we say we subscribe and watch the videos is because of the algorithm. Long as you're watching it all the way through and actually sharing these videos. So if you're on the show right now, just go down and give it a thumbs up. It helps to get more people out there to learn about this information. And a lot of people are missing out because there's a lot of great content out there. If you sat there more than 1 minute to watch a video, just give it a thumbs up. Even if you didn't finish the whole thing, just give it a thumbs up. It really helps, no matter which channel you're watching. But ultimately, for this channel and also his channel, you gotta make sure you like, subscribe, and make
Yeah.
sure you hit the bell button. Yeah.
Yeah, have your children watch it too. Like I guarantee that like children that watch the All This Math YouTube channel on a regular basis will have increased math scores, math confidence. If they already have great math scores, they'll definitely maintain them. It can't get worse. You
And your
know.
videos are not that long either. So they can sit down at a dinner table. Well, not at a dinner table, like shortly after dinner or right before bed, look at a video right quick, learn something new, and then they can think about that while they go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she has on here, it was fun when my children got their first jobs and they always wondered how much their check was fine. I guess was going to be after taxes. I could say, see, told you, told you there are real world uses for math. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Because it's, math, they be hidden. People be sleeping on it all the time. But also getting back to the impoverished community, she subbed.
Make a request. Yeah, she just subbed. Can you give me air horn?
Oh, you get the horns again? Yeah. Got
Yeah.
another sub. Let's go. Let's go. Awesome. So thank you, thank you. Is there anything that you want to say before we kind of wrap up? I know we've been going on for a minute.
Yeah, just everybody just, subscribe to the YouTube channel, use the YouTube channel, tell everybody about the YouTube channel. I just want everybody to know that it exists. It's a very invaluable resource. It's very valid. You'll learn some math and you'll also learn some history at the same time. And it's also in terms of like, it's a positive, type of representation where you can see like, a black man that, is passionate about mathematics and not just passionate about math, but I'm very passionate about our people understanding math because there's so much negative propaganda around mathematics in our community, and people have had a lot of negative experiences around mathematics, whether it was in school or just just in different, times in their life. And I just want to try to repair that. And I'm really trying to teach math to the entire Black community. And with the internet and with the online resources that are available, I think it's very doable. So I'm just really trying to promote and popularize the channel. Also, check out How to Use All This Math Volume 1. It's available on Amazon. Take a look and go through the 20 chapters. They're 20 short chapters. Each chapter covers a different everyday activity, and I show how to use that everyday activity to develop arithmetic skills and algebra skills. Volume 2 will be coming out either later this year or early 2024, where it'll be 20 more examples, and then Volume 3 will have 20 more examples. Because I want to meet our people where they are and show them, that what you're doing already can be used to teach your child mathematics, and that way they'll be prepared for math class. Because our
Now,
children,
which age level is the first volume is set for?
that's a good question. So it varies. It varies, and it's kind of all mixed in. I would say so. Some chapters and some skills might be more appropriate for like 5 and 6 year olds and up, and then other ones might be more appropriate if you already have an understanding of fractions and decimals and percentages already. But even I would say, like, people ask me this on social media when I first published the book, and I would say ages 6 and up. you
Okay.
know but yeah, but it's definitely like a tool for, like, it's not a book to just to buy and give to your children. It's a tool for you to buy but use and like read through and then say, oh yeah, we can do this in the car, or we can do this when I, tell a story. Like I got a chapter in here, probably like my favorite chapter in here is the one on negative ages,
Oh,
where it's
yeah, you gotta talk about that.
the number line and then introduce negative numbers. Whereas, so it's something I started doing with my daughter, Asada. And this is like supposed to be like a rendition of her on the cover right here.
Mhm.
So when I'm telling her a story about something that I experienced when I was a child, of course she wasn't there, she wasn't born yet,
Right.
but I always ask her like, well, how old were you when that happened? So I've taught her to conceptualize like a number line, and like she was born in 2012, so that's her zero in her number line, 2012, right? So if it's something that happened in 1988, when I was 8 years old, I'm telling her a story about, yeah, I was 8 years old, and like me and your like, your grandpop or your grandmother, we did this, me and your auntie, Auntie Booby or Auntie Nifa or Auntie Yana, whoever, we were doing this. And well, it wouldn't be Auntie Yana because she wasn't even born until I was 12. But but anyway, uh, but yeah, so when I was 8, and I'm like Asada, how old were you? And then she does the math because she knows, okay, well, it's 1988. I was born in 2012. 2012 is like my 0 year, like
Mhm.
number line. So then she just does the subtraction, 2012 minus 1988, or she adds 2000 to 2012 is 12 years. 1988 to 2000 is another 12 years. So 12 and 12 is 24. So she said, Dad, I was negative 24 years old.
Nice.
So as a way to like use a storytelling aspect to teach arithmetic with integers, with negative integers. And it also like makes me feel like closer to her, because it's like, I know you weren't physically there, but you you weren't physically there, but you just hadn't been born yet, but you're still connected in terms of the chronology, of my life experience and your life experience. So that's something cool and that's something, because we tell our children stories all the time. We always talking about
Mhm.
back in the day, or when I was your age, or, well, you know what? How about this? Like when I was your age, when I was 15, we was doing this and this, and like, how old were you when I was 15? Or you know what I'm saying? Like have them do that math, because then by the time they get to school and somebody tries to, throw negative numbers into the mix, and they might have never seen it before in school, but they're not overwhelmed by it, because it's like, oh, I've been talking about negative numbers my whole life, because I understand.
Literally, right? Because you talk about age.
Yeah, like it's I understand negative numbers. It's a concept that's very familiar to me.
Right. Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have to link up because I do have I call it a Mad Lib. I like Mad Libs. So I created a money Mad Lib that's kind of just similar. So maybe we can team up on. I would like to team up with you on a dual, like a Mad Lib that we can hand out. It could just be in one of your books. I don't know. But
Let's
yeah,
talk. Definitely.
because I think that'll be fun. I like Mad Libs. It's something you can do with the family, have fun with it, and then everybody kind of get a quick chuckle out of it. See what
Mhm.
happens. Awesome. So one of the things that, like, again, we talked about stories, and I'm glad that you're actually adding stories inside your mix because it's one of the things that stick. So I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it is what it.
And we're
Yeah. All right. So if you guys are still here, I would say again, make sure you go ahead on lock in Akil's page, All This Math. Okay, it's allthismath.com. He's on YouTube, All This Math. Make sure you guys lock in, stay tuned, make sure you click those bells because you want to know when he goes live, you want to know when he posts the new stuff.
yeah.
All right, everybody. Um
Instagram and TikTok, all this math. Instagram and TikTok also, all this math.
oh nice, yeah.
Everything is all this math. Yeah.
Get on it. So again, you guys, if you want to be part of my newsletter, make sure you go to aboutthatwallet.com/, I believe it's newsletter. Yeah, it's newsletter. So once you go there, you can get on my it's a monthly email list. I give out free tools, free recommendations, new you'll be the first heard about downloads, first heard about what's happening in the financial community. I actually rock with a lot of other financial specialists. So if you've seen my lives before, you know that I'm bringing people that have done TED Talks. You can actually look up their TED Talks. I've done people who've been in multiple industries. So please make sure that you subscribe, like, and continue to support the show, because I want to bring on more people like Akil to bring the energy, bring the realness in the world of finances in different aspects, and also bring the habits that help take you to that next level. I'll get it right one of these days. Uh, all right, I know it's a long outro, but hopefully, I wish you all the best, and thank you, you guys in the comments. I love you, because without you, you help fuel this conversation. And those of you who are watching that didn't comment, hey, it's okay. Maybe on the next one, I got you. All right. Again, if you can just hold on for a little minute, I'm gonna just kind of end the broadcast and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. All right, everybody. Well, peace.